A thriving Calgary is a place where people see themselves reflected in the city. They see themselves reflected in decision-making positions. They see themselves reflected throughout the labor force and the community. And so I think to truly have a Calgary that is inclusive and welcoming and a place that everyone wants to be, you have to make sure you have diversity, number one, in your economy and your labor force. You have to understand that every job is essential and we need to focus on all of them. You have to make sure that your communities are places that are welcoming to everyone. You have to make sure that people can age in place as well as have entry level opportunities to build a life there. And we have to make sure that our social sector is supporting people who are in positions of vulnerability. We have to make sure that we support our creative sector, which really documents the history of our city and tells the story of who we are. So I think it's really about inclusivity and making sure that we are bolstering all sectors really well. It's always interesting when people talk about local government and they want to know your position on the economy, but not so much on public services. And it's literally the job of a government to provide public service. So I think it's incredibly important to remember that as a local government, we are the ones that ensure quality of life because we're the ones that make sure your water runs when you turn on your tap, that when you flush your toilets, things go away, the roads that you drive on, the buses that you hop on to get to where you need to be. We have to make sure those operate the best possible ability and that you are able to access those things no matter where you live in the city. And I think that's the focus that we need to be taking. How are we ensuring that the funding streams we have with our partner orders of government are adequate to provide Calgarians the quality of life that they need, and that we're ensuring we respect the people who work at the city who provide those services, the people who are running our transit network, the people who are making sure that waste and recycling is getting taken care of, and the some 15,000 Calgarians that are employed by our corporation are being treated with the respect that we are often able to give the private sector, but we're sometimes a little bit shy on providing our public sector. So we need to focus equally on both. Private-public partnerships are something that I believe in, and I think they can help strengthen how we provide various services within a city, within a province, within the nation as well. But I think we need to be very clear on what it means. And I think provincially, the model has tended to be looking at public-private partnerships as more of a procurement. And so, you will farm out certain pieces of a project. For example, there's a public high school, my very first public high school in Ward 3 being built where it's considered a P3 because we are leveraging the private sector to complete parts of it. But I think a P3 works the best when we all understand what it is that each partner brings to the table and why it is that we are leveraging their expertise. And when we start doing this dichotomous conversation of would it be better as private or would it be better as public, that ideological drift is the thing that creates problems. So I think P3s have a really strong role to play in city building. There was a model that was tested along the West Coast. It extended British Columbia down into Washington and Oregon. And they looked at some major infrastructure projects that were done as P3s. I think we can learn from models like that. There has never been a strong and successful city anywhere in the world that did not invest in its public transit network. When you open up public transit to anybody who lives or visits the city, you are suddenly providing accessibility that would otherwise not be there if you were relying on private transportation. So a strong city is one with a strong public transit network that everyone wants to take. I know for me, the fight has been for a very long time trying to bring LRT up into north central Calgary communities. And for about 30 years, previous elected representatives had overlooked the need for a functional plan, which is, the technical term for the study that shows how you would lay the track. I'm very happy that in the last 4 years, we have made that functional plan a reality. And so in time, we will finally get a train up to north central Calgary and create that north-south rapid transit spine. But if you don't keep your eye on the things that need to get done and you don't understand the policies by which public transit either becomes a reality or it gets hindered, then you can't have as strong a city as you need. So I hope the elected officials that we see in this new version of council are well versed in why we need public transit and how to make sure that it happens. I also believe that we can't focus on a single project, that being the Green Line. We have to be strengthening our bus routes, accessible bus routes, our transit on demand. All of that has to be something that we provide equal opportunity to. What's very interesting about the changes to the Local Authorities Elections Act when it comes to donations in a municipal campaign is that it's been a two-party approach. So for the folks that don't care for the NDP, don't worry, the UCP backed the decisions that the NDP had made back in the day. And to boil it down, both parties agreed that donations to a municipal campaign should only come from personal donations. So it can only be individuals who are contributing and not corporations. And the maximum amount should be $5,000. So that would eliminate corporations and unions and organized associations contributing to municipal candidates' campaigns. That was intended to take away the so-called dark money. And it was also decided by both parties that there was no need for early disclosure because only being able to donate as an individual would take away those large donations that were sometimes viewed as being, less than desirable. The problem is the UCP government created a way around it. They created third-party advertisers, which can take corporate and union donations up to $30,000. We have a situation right now in Calgary where a competitor of mine is doing an advertising campaign fully funded by corporate donations through a third-party advertiser. I'm choosing not to do that. I've not been endorsed by a TPA, third-party advertiser, and I'm not colluding with anyone. I'm doing my best to raise those personal donations, but it creates an unlevel playing field, particularly for people who are not incumbents in a council position. It's going to be really tough to raise money this year. So the rules were improved a little bit, but the execution of them has fallen short of what the intention was. Well, I'll tell you, in 2017, I released my donor list. I believe it was October the 1st. It was a few weeks before the election. And I did that because at the time, you could take corporate donations, you could take union donations and personal donations. And there was a lot of question about where the money was coming from, so I released all the information. This year, I've been talking to my donors and I've been talking to my team. I could not have anticipated the level of hate that has been directed social media towards people who are supporting campaigns. I'm prepared to take the comments that are ugly and often racist, but when they get filtered down to the people who are supporting my campaign, that becomes an issue. It becomes incredibly threatening. We've also had competitor campaigns pick up the phone and threaten people who might make a donation to me and say, you need to know that we'll remember this. So we are in a very interesting place in the election where I would like to disclose a donor list at some point. But right now, the safety of people that have donated to me and their well-being is my primary concern. So we're figuring this out. Housing and homelessness should be a priority item for every municipality, not just in Alberta or in our nation, but globally. We haven't got this right yet. And one of the things that I've pushed for is to make housing a priority item, Priorities and Finance Committee. Now, the good news is that committee structure will be evolving to an executive committee of council, which I think is a very healthy thing. And that involves standing policy committee chairs working with the Office of the Mayor to execute on some major files, including housing. I think we have to look across the spectrum from market-based housing all the way to deep subsidy and see where the gaps are and what we can do as a municipality to address them. I've been pretty happy to see the federal government start the Rapid Housing Initiative, where dollars can flow directly to a municipality that can demonstrate a strong project or a strong program. That's helped us avoid the bureaucracy of getting money dispersed from the province. I've also been pretty happy to see that there's been some good public-private partnerships where we've seen members of the home building and land development industry working hand in hand with subsidized housing providers to put more units in our city. So I think it's a priority. I don't think we've done a good enough job of it yet. And when it comes to homelessness, I think it is going to be a very positive step to see us moving away from warehousing people to actually providing them with a dignified place to live. And most importantly, the wraparound supports they need for their physical health, their mental health, any disabilities, any addictions or mental health treatment that they need. If we can send a mobile response unit to help them in a period of crisis to keep them housed, that's the way we address housing and homelessness, not by simply looking at it as a unit or a roof over somebody's head, but how do you keep them safely housed in the roof that you find for them? The question of the fiscal relationship between a municipal government and a provincial government is a really big one. And I think what should be happening is that both orders of government should realize that each has a role to play in the economic success of its citizens. So one of the things that I think is going to be incredibly important for Calgary is to sort of shed this idea of hanging on the coattails of the province's identity. I think we need to step up as a city and say, you know, we understand that we are ideally positioned to be a center of excellence for the transition economy, the transition away from carbon-based energy production into a more sustainable, cleaner, and greener future. We can be leaders in the new world of energy production, but we have to own that place on the stage that we are interested in a transition economy. When I don't see those things from the provincial government, we need to make sure that we're doing them as a local government. And I think that's been the interesting mindset shift that needs to happen. You can have two different orders of government, each with a different identity, and still be successful because you understand that there's a common goal. But I think each needs to support the other. So for example, when we collect property taxes as a municipality, 40% of those are sent up to the province. Yet there's no accountability for where they're being spent. And I'm a little bit troubled to know that we are told to be reliant only on those property taxes. We have had all other funding mechanisms removed from our relationship with the provincial government, yet we have been offloaded many more things that we need to provide to our citizens. Affordable housing being one, our police budget has gone down. There is an anticipation that we will make decisions around pandemic-related issues. It's very difficult to have a strong relationship with a provincial government that does not wish the same type of open dialogue. It's a two-way street. I'm happy to work with the province, but they need to be willing to work with us. I think it's incredibly important to understand that a strong city makes smart decisions for its people. And so labor force participation is something we need to look at through a gender-based lens, through a lens of different sectors. And when I think about the fact that the immigrant populations in Calgary are predominantly represented through the care sector, we have to make sure that we have strong ability for them to access those jobs. So if we have people that are traveling between a couple of different locations because they're providing care to our seniors, you need a strong public transit network. If those folks also need childcare, we have to make sure that we are providing those spaces in terms of allowing more land uses that accept childcare, especially affordable childcare. So I think as a city, we need to focus on our people and understand how their labor force participation can be increased, how their housing options can be made as strong as possible, and really just repeat that message that good cities are intersections of people and places that we build for them.